Thank you. Yeah. All right.
Matt.
Wow.
I want you to share your experience.
All right. I'm really glad that he started off by reading through the verses because with a week's time to prepare for this, I really didn't know what to do. But the way I look at it is we're all here together for one purpose, and that's to see God. And so hopefully you can see God through me and what I'm about to say. So I'm going to tell you the story about my life. And when I was 10 months old, my mom murdered my father, and she went to prison for 25 to life. I got adopted by my uncle, and my older brother got adopted, and I had one older brother that was 10 at the time, and he went back to the system. He went from foster home to foster home and ended up moving in with an aunt, had a really rough upbringing. Well, the uncle that adopted me and my brother, he was an ordained minister. He's a reverend. He'd just given his life to Christ. He was working in the homeless shelters, drug and alcohol programs. And so that's what I was raised, going to church and going to Christian schools and really raised in the church. And when I was 13 years old, we getting registered for school, I was in class and they said, "Oh, you're Matthew Futrell." And I said, "No, I'm Matthew Roscoe." And they said, "No, you're Matthew Futrell." And I started arguing with them because I didn't know who Matthew Futrell was. I had never heard that name. And I said, "Call my mom. She'll tell you who I am." And so she came down to the school because I was not accepting that name. And sure enough, she said, "That's our special child." "What do you mean special child?" "Well, you were adopted." "Oh, great. Here we go. What do you mean I was adopted? How did this happen? Like, you're not my mom. You're not my dad. My whole life is a lie. I don't trust anybody now." At 13, that was a real turning point for me. After raised in the church, understanding God and his forgiveness and his whole thing, it's like, man, I don't want nothing to do with you, the church, any of it. And that's when I ran from God. And very similar to the story of Jonah, he ended up in the belly of a whale. I ended up in prison. I got involved in drugs and crime and just completely to turn my life away from God. Well, one thing led to another. And after prison, kind of got my life together a little bit, not really, wasn't focused on him, got married, got divorced, ended up working in the oil fields in Montana, and just kind of bounced around, really flailing through life. No purpose, no drive, no calling, didn't know what to do with my life. Well, out of nowhere, my brother, the one that was 10 years older than me, he found me on Facebook, and we'd been separated at that point for 28 years. He reached out to me and said, "Hey, I've got a house in Florida. I've got a job if you want it. I've got a car you can use. I'd really like to get to know you. Would you be willing to come down to Florida so we can get to know each other?" It's like, well, you couldn't have called it a better time because I just got 2 DUIs in 90 days. I got no house. I lost my job. I'm losing everything. I don't know what to do with my life. Yeah, sure. I'll drive across the country. I'll come meet you. So with no license, no registration, no insurance, nothing except for the cash in my pocket from my last paycheck, I drove across the country from Williston, North Dakota to Deltona, Florida. And I met my brother for the very first time. And we got to know each other. And some of you might talk about nature versus nurture and how to bring your kids up. And it's unbelievable how similar we were, considering my upbringing in the church and in the ministry, and then turning and running away, and then meeting him who never had any real Christian upbringing. We were so similar in so many ways. And I realized at that point man, if I don't change my life, I'm going to be just like you in 10 years. And that was a scary thought. He was doing all right, but didn't have God in his life. And so the company we were working with, they sent me on a project to Aiken, South Carolina. And so I left Florida to go work up there. And this old man, Willie, he talked like Frog Dog. It was hilarious the way he talked. And he's got deep Georgia accent. Well, sorry if anybody's from Georgia. But he encouraged me. He saw God in me before I saw God in myself. And he told me, Matt, you've got a purpose. You've got a calling. You need to give your life to God. You need to quit drinking all the time. You need to get your life right. I said, okay, Willie, we'll see about that. Well, he was very persistent. The next couple of weeks that we were working together, it was every single day. Like, you need to stop. You need to stop. You need to stop. It's like, man, all right, I'll give you 30 days. I'll quit drinking for 30 days, Willie. Just give me a break. Like, I'm tired of hearing about it. So I quit drinking. And, well, then I got bored. I'm sitting there. I got nothing to do. It's like, well, I'm going to go to church. And so I went to a church in Aiken. And I don't know if you guys have walked into a church before and sat through the service and got done and you left and you're like, man, that was a waste of an hour and a half. Like, I didn't feel anything from that. And so that's how I felt. It's like, man, that was weird. Okay, well, I'm going to go to another church. I see the sign on it says the next service starts at 11:30. It's only 10. I'll hang out. I'll go get coffee. I'll go to another church. And so double church that day. I heard the sermon from the second church, and the second pastor spoke, and it was about laying it down and giving your life to God and really giving your life to God. And so at that moment I did. And after that, I met my wife in Indian Trail. She was a teacher, and she's from Bogota, Colombia. And she was an amazing woman, and here I am with this crazy past and this wild upbringing and kind of raised by the wolves, so to speak. And she's normal and didn't really know much about me. It was, well, we started dating and we fell in love and got married and had a son, and everything was going really good. And we started going to church together and got involved in a community group. And you know, I didn't have a purpose yet, but I was going through the motions. I was doing what I knew I was supposed to do as a Christian. I was trying not to drink anymore. I was trying to behave myself and going to church and kind of checking the boxes. And, well, I get this phone call one afternoon that my brother in Florida had passed away. He went down on his motorcycle, and it was a double hit and run, and he died on scene. And that was a real hard news to hear. So I packed up and was getting ready to go to Florida to go be with the family and go through that process of grieving. And my friends from work had invited me to this thing called Outpost. And you might have heard Vic talk about it in the past, but it's a men's retreat. And so I had heard about it, and it's like, man, now is not the time for this. I'm going to deal with my brother's passing. I'm not going this year. So fast forward to the next year. Well, I was going back to Florida for his memorial. I already had my plane ticket bought, and I was invited to go to Outpost again. It's like, well, bad timing, not going to go. I got other things to do. Well, the next year, my third year, these people very persistent. I guess that's a Christian theme. So I get invited. It's like, all right, fine. I'll go to Outpost. I could use a men's retreat. Why not? What do I got to lose? Go hang out with a bunch of Christian dudes for a weekend? Sounds like fun. Had no clue what God had in store for me. So on day 2, well, really the first morning, because you come the afternoon, this guy gets up on stage and he starts sharing his testimony. And he's got this big duffel bag that he's got, and he starts pulling out rocks, and each one of them has a wound that he had in his life, and he starts going through them. Well, the first wound he pulled out was a mom wound, and he had been dealing with some things when he was like 5 years old, and something happened with her and her husband where they got a divorce, and he carried that wound of that frustration towards his mother his whole life. And as soon as I heard that, I'm sitting in the crowd and it wrecked me. I was like, holy crap, I got a mom wound. I never thought about it like that before. Like, no wonder I can't get close with God. No wonder I'm just going through the motions. Like, I have a mom wound. Like, this whole time, my whole life, anytime anything bad happened, well, if my mom wouldn't have killed my dad, I wouldn't have had to go through this. Or, well, if I didn't get adopted, then I would have known my mom and dad and things would be different. Or, man, here I am in jail again. You know, maybe if I had had a different upbringing, this would be different. Always held on to a lot of anger and hate towards my mom for that. Well, I realized at that moment that I needed to forgive her. Now, it's asking a lot. I'm 35 years old at the time, and I had never even spoken with her. I don't know where she is. I don't know anything about her other than when my brother had passed away, his widow, Amy, had asked me if she could come to the funeral. Well, at that time, that was not the time for me to meet my mom. I didn't want her there. She didn't know me. She didn't have a relationship with my brother that I knew of. This isn't the time for that. No, I don't want her to come. Well, so I go through Outpost, and I realize that I need to forgive her. And they have this thing where you write down what it is that you're giving to God, or what it is that you're letting go of, or what it is that you're going to change, and you put it in a barrel that's on fire, and you burn it, and you give it to God. Well, I wrote down unforgiveness. I'm going to forgive my mom. That's what I was putting in the fire. And I really gave it to God, and I really meant it. I leave the men's retreat. Not even 20 minutes after I pull out of the parking lot, the one person in my phone that had my mother's number starts calling me, and it was Amy. And I looked down at my phone, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's no way this is real. Hello? What are you doing calling me right now? Like, really, like, what? We haven't spoken in almost 2 years. Like, what's up? Everything good? It's like, well, nice to talk to you too, jerk. I'm like, is that how you answer your phone? I'm like, well, no, really, what are you doing calling me? She's like, well, I was just calling to tell you I'm coming for Thanksgiving. I'm like, oh, that makes it even worse, because that was the last conversation I had with my brother. There's no way, like, you're calling because you got Teresa's number. Yeah, what are you going to do? Call her and forgive her? As a matter of fact, I am. Like, I need her number. She's like, holy cow, I'll send it to you right now. Let me know how it goes. And so she gets off the phone with me and sends me Teresa's number. So now I'm driving home. I got the number. Well, I said I was going to forgive her. Well, I'll get to it. I don't know what to say to her. I have never spoken with her. Am I just going to call her up out of the blue? Maybe. The next song that came on the radio was I Surrender All. And I literally looked up like, okay, God, can I have a minute? Like, can you give me a minute? Like, I don't even know what to say. Like, I guess I'll call her right now. Okay, here it goes. So I called her, and she answered the phone. That was a win. I was like, hello? Yeah, who's this? I said, this is Matthew Roscoe. Is this Teresa? She says, yeah, what's going on, honey? Like, her entire demeanor, her whole voice changed. What's going on, honey? And it's like, you know, God put it on my heart to reach out to you and see if you'd be willing to forgive me for holding on to all my hate and anger that I've carried over you my whole life. And she's like, are you serious? I said, yeah, I'm serious. She's like, well, of course I'll forgive you. Will you forgive me? And it's like, yeah, absolutely. Let's do this. Like, let's start talking. God's got a purpose for this. I don't know what it is, but let's see where this goes. So at that moment, we started talking and getting to know each other. Fast forward a couple months, and she decided that she wanted to come and visit, get to know me and meet my family. And so she did, and my wife being of sound mind instead of like me who's crazy, was like, well, let's slow down, let's wait, let's get to know her, let's talk to her a little longer, because I was ready to have her come out that next week. I gotta meet her. Let's see what it's like. Well, let's wait, let's see what happens. So she gets tickets, she flies down, and I had a couple people lined up to come meet her at the airport with me, and nobody showed up. So now I was real nervous, like, okay, well, here we go, gonna meet my mom. And she got off the plane and came running to me, arms open wide, give me a big old hug. And now she gets to have her son in her life. And she got to meet my wife and meet my kids. And she gets to be mom, and she gets to be grandma and mother-in-law. And she decided while she was here to sell her home and move down here. And I work for True Homes, so I know a guy that's got a house for sale. And I told her, hey, there's a house in this neighborhood if you're interested. She liked it. She got pre-qualified that same day and went under contract before she left and sold her house in Oregon and was able to pack up a U-Haul and drive a U-Haul with all of her belongings, pulling her car from Florence, Oregon, all the way to York, South Carolina. And now she lives 8 minutes up the road, and we get to have life together. And it's incredible. And the freedom that gave me is beyond words. But that's a story of unforgiveness and forgiveness. I held on to that this whole time. And it was one of those, like, why can't I get closer with God? I'm going through the motions. I'm going to church. I'm checking the boxes. I'm in Bible study. I was actually serving I think it was tear down and set up at church. I was doing that a little bit, and it was very empty until this happened. Once this happened, I realized exactly what my purpose was. And my purpose is to share this story of forgiveness. Because if I can forgive her and she can forgive me and we can be reconciled before God, that's something that some people may never understand. Some people may judge that. But I hope and pray that somebody here can forgive somebody for talking bad about them, can forgive somebody for being a bully or being mean or maybe taking something that didn't belong to you or whatever the case may be. If I can find it in my heart to forgive my mother, then you can find it in your heart to forgive whoever it is that has harmed you. Or maybe you're the person that needs forgiveness. Maybe you're the one that's harmed somebody. So either way, if you've got a name that's popping in your head of somebody that you need to forgive, if you've got somebody in your heart that you want to give it to God, today's the day. Tomorrow's not promised. You don't know what the future holds. Give it to God. So I invite the team to come up, and if you need prayer, if you want to pray, if you want to forgive somebody, today's the day. So, Vic, thank you for allowing me to come and share my story. And I just want to know if there's anybody that needs prayer.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.